Have you getting up with us, and as I will continue to say, we'll be here with you every morning, and as sports fans, we're going to get through this thing together, and we'll start by getting up and going, because there's actually a lot of big sports news out there for you, and it starts with some very good news on the coronavirus front. New Orleans Saints head coach Sean Payton said he was cleared Tuesday after testing positive for COVID-19 last week. Payton first began feeling symptoms on March the 15th. He told WWL Radio he has been fever-free now for 8 or 9 days. Tennis, Wimbledon, the All England Club will hold an emergency meeting next week to determine if they can hold their tournament as planned. They can't postpone it because the weather is very specific they need to be able to play on grass in that region. So right now, I would say Wimbledon is in serious jeopardy. Elsewhere, the NHL announced yesterday the league is postponing the 2020 draft, the scouting combine, and their awards show due to uncertainty surrounding the coronavirus. All of those had been scheduled for June. And college basketball of a sort, Dayton's superstar Obi Toppin was named Player of the Year. Now he's announced he's declaring for the NBA draft, made the announcement in a video posted on Twitter saying, quote, "I believe it is time to start the next chapter of my journey." He is number 9 on ESPN's Top 100. And the Cowboys have resumed contract negotiations with Dak Prescott for the first time since using the exclusive franchise tag on him earlier this month. This according to our Ed Werder, who says the holdup now appears to be more in terms of the length of the deal than the total money in the deal. The two sides have until July 15th to work out a long-term deal, or he will have to play on the franchise tag if he's going to play this year. And that brings us to the big Swagoo and Dominique Foxworth. And Marcus, I will start with you. We are to understand now that Dak wants a shorter deal, and that's what this is really being held up by. Why would he want that?
G, good morning, first of all. And second, man, because if you look at the trends in free agency this year, I actually was seeing a bunch of 3-year deals that guys were signing. I reached out to my former agent, Pat Dye Jr., and I asked him, I said, man, why are these guys signing 3-year deals? And if you look throughout the league in free agency, the reason is they want to get all of their money. This is the closest way to ensuring that you get a guaranteed contract fully. And I'm pretty sure that's what Dak and Todd France, his agent, is thinking. If we can get a 4-year deal, not only are we probable to see all of that money, but we get back on the market. And obviously, that's the card you want to play, especially being in Dak's situation.
Look, so much of the uncertainty that there existed is now gone out of this, right? We know how many franchise tags there are. He has one. We know how much it's for. We know what the salary cap is going to be. They have 10 years of labor peace in front of them. Dominique, they need to get this thing done at some point soon, right? If not, it's going to start to feel like there legitimately is a problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's felt like there's legitimately a problem for some time now, but I think Jerry Jones is a master of media, and we get sucked into all of his drama throughout the course of several years, decades, frankly, and that's part of the reason why the Cowboys are as popular as they are, because they continue to give us something to talk about. And I think Dak wanting a shorter deal, I think Marcus is right. It's about getting as much guaranteed as you can, and it's also about getting back to free agency. If the cap continues to grow as the way it does now, Dak's 17%, or what $35 million would equate to, will be up to nearly $45 million at that point. So that money's going to keep going up, and I hear people saying that money's going to go up higher. The cap's going to take a huge leap under this new CBA. So Dak better get that bread as many times as he can.
All right, fair enough. But Swagoo, let me just ask you the question.
Money, dog.
Yeah. Let me throw one question at you, Swagoo, and that is, we talked about this yesterday. At this point, let's say they bring back Dak, which we assume at some point in some way they will. And they've brought back Amari Cooper. It's not like they've added him. And they've lost a bunch of very important players, including Byron Jones and now Travis Frederick. Is there any reason to think the Cowboys are going to be better than the 8-8 they were this past season next season?
Yeah, there's absolutely. You damn right, G. First of all, Jason Garrett's no longer the head coach. We talked about that ad nauseum last year about the decision making and what this offense was. Amari is stable now. Obviously, when guys get their money now, there's two sides to that. Either you shut it down or you get comfortable in your situation and you go out and become a better player. That's one of the things. And I think Blake Jordan is a significant upgrade over Jason Witten. The tight ends are imperative now in the NFL. And I believe believe last year Blake Jarwin was held back to try to get Jason Witten in games and have him highly involved in this offense. Zeke won't be in Cabo for half a training camp either. The Travis Frederick move is an issue. Obviously, Travis retiring, and we give our best to him, our best regards. But look, if you in the NFL and you can't find a center to get on the same page with your quarterback, you can't do your job as a front office. The center is the most helped position on the offensive line, meaning guards will help them, and they just slide and kind of cover everybody. So the communication between him and Dak is the most important. They'll be fine.
So you would be willing to bet some of those hard-earned swagoo dollars that they're going to win the NFC East next year?
Yeah, the little bit that I have, I would be willing to bet it. Yep.
Yeah. Nick, would you bet some of his money on it?
Oh, I'd absolutely bet some of his money. I'm not betting my money, though, because it's hard to make an argument that their roster has gotten any better. They could get better by a change of coaching, but their roster certainly hasn't gotten any better. And Dak Prescott, he could get better. He's been on the kind of Russell Wilson trajectory so far in his career. If he continues to climb and gets to that level, then maybe they'll win. But right now, I got the Eagles winning it.
Yeah, I think that feels like a better bet. Meanwhile, our insider today is Jeff Darlington. And Jeff, let's run the hurry up through a bunch of stories out there. And it starts with Cam Newton. He's a free agent. What is his market looking like?
Well, Greeny, some of the most understated comments of the offseason when Dave Tepper, the Panthers owner, came out and said that they don't know if Cam Newton would be their starting quarterback because of his health concerns. That did no favors for the Panthers trying to trade him. It does no favors for Newton when it comes to his market because, quite frankly, teams can't evaluate him because of the NFL restrictions. Now it's a wonder where Newton will go. Maybe the Chargers, Greeny?
We're going to talk a lot more about Cam a little bit later in this hour. But how about Jameis Winston? Where's he right now?
Well, this is an interesting one because you really do have two jobs that are completely open, and that being the Patriots, seemingly unless they go with Jarrett Stidham, and then the Chargers situation. But then you also have some backup jobs, maybe like Denver and the Jaguars. Those are two situations where it could be a Ryan Tannehill type of deal where you go in there potentially as the backup, knowing that in training camp and then early regular season, you can come out and eventually win that job.
And then there is Tua Tagovailoa, who Mel has projected to go 5 to the Dolphins in his latest mock draft. Jeff, is it a good bet that someone's going to move up ahead of 5 to take him?
Well, you know what's especially interesting about this is we talked about it with Cam Newton and Jameis Winston. Some of the restrictions that the NFL is placing make it very difficult for those guys to land places. It'll be interesting to see how this also impacts the ability for a team to trade up to get Tua, not knowing entirely about his medical situation. If you can't evaluate him in person, you can't see him live, is a team going to be willing to invest that much to jump all the way to 3 to do it? That makes it even more likely, potentially, the Dolphins could land him at number 5 if indeed they choose that route.
Well, let's expand on that thought because one of the teams we think might be moving ahead of 5 is the Dolphins themselves. And we have some odds from Vegas I'll show you in a minute that suggest that the Dolphins right now seem like the equally likely team of any in the league to take him. Do the Dolphins feel, to the best of your knowledge, as though they will be able to get him at 5?
See, this is where it gets so difficult. As I was just mentioning, the restrictions that the NFL is placing here. Now, teams, the Dolphins, for instance, tried to get Tua into their facility before these restrictions were laid down. The restrictions I'm talking about are the NFL essentially saying you can't travel to go see a prospect, you can't bring him into your facility due to the coronavirus situation. What you can do is spend 3 phone calls, video conference calls per week, up to an hour each with these prospects. When it comes to someone like Tua, that's not all that helpful. You know his leadership is great. The question is about his health. So is a team going to be willing to jump up and give so much to get there? Instead, it feels like the Dolphins potentially, crazy enough, could maybe get him at 5.
All right, we'll find out. Jeff, stay with me. You'll be with us all through the show today. But I want to put up that full screen I just referenced a second ago. This is from Caesars in Vegas, and they see it as a dead heat right now for the Dolphins and the Lions to land Tua Tagovailoa. Remember, right now it's Detroit that picks at 3, and we've said repeatedly that the draft starts at 3. Those two have the shortest odds. You see Washington on the screen there, and then the Chargers, and so not a lot of mention of anyone else in that conversation. And so let me bring the other guys back into this here again, Marcus and Dominique, as we talk. You just heard Jeff Darlington talking about it, and Marcus, again, you're so close to the situation, being there at the SEC Network all through the season, seeing everything Tua has ever done. Is it your sense right now that a team is going to have to move up ahead of 5, including the Dolphins, if they want to assure themselves of getting Tua?
Gee, it's not really that clear to me because I believe Miami could get Tua at 5. If you look at the 3 teams ahead, Washington obviously at 2, Detroit, and then you got the Giants. Neither one needs a quarterback. Now, everybody's talking about Detroit. I'm still trying to figure out when did Matt Stafford become a bad quarterback and what's the plan going forward unless they just want to blow the thing up and start a new future. But Miami could possibly sit pat at 5. Now, here's the caveat. Most teams, when they've quickly identified their franchise-changing quarterback, they don't take chances on that. So I think that may be Miami's thinking, sitting there with 3 first-round picks. If you can give 2 away and possibly get Tua and still have a pick left, that may be smart if that's your guy you're sold on. But to Jeff's point and what everybody has been talking about, the injury still gives you pause. So if you could get him at 5 without feeling like you're going to have to bite every nail off your hand sitting there waiting on those 3 ahead of you, then you just sit pat and try to get him at 5.
Chargers, Panthers, you want to throw someone sort of off the radar into this, the Raiders, someone else who might move up there. Dominique, I'll ask you a similar question to what I asked you before. Would you risk a whole bunch of Marcus's money and perhaps your entire career if you're a general manager on taking Tua Tagovailoa high in this draft?
Oh, yeah. I would risk Marcus's money on just about anything. But the question about the career is more relevant. I think when you draft quarterbacks in the top 5, that is your career, or that is at least your career in that place for the coach and the general manager. If that quarterback succeeds, you may go down and get an extension. If that quarterback fails, you are looking for a job somewhere else to be someone else's assistant. So that's a big deal. And I think that they are going to have to move up, because the 1 through 5 is kind of a situation where the value is at quarterback and someone is going to move up there. Even though there aren't a ton of teams who need quarterbacks right now, there are a lot of teams out there who I think would love to have Tua on their roster to sit out for a year. Someone's going to move in front of the Dolphins if the Dolphins don't move up themselves, and they're going to take that risk, injuries and all considered, because people think Tua is going to be the type of guy that can change your franchise. So it's worth doing for a lot of teams, but I don't know if I got the guts to go out there and do